Hey folks, I want to tell you a story about a Christian warrior. I know right now in the world there's a lot of people in our world who want to fight for God. They want to fight for Christ. They want to do battle against evil. They want to do battle against all that is unholy in their eyes. They want to do battle against, everything that they deem to be unacceptable, and they want to do it for God. And so I want to tell you a story about one in particular true Christian warrior that I really, really admire. Because I think he takes what it means to be a Christian warrior seriously. And he does it right. So the guy's name's Ignatius. Comes from a place called Loyola. Ignatius was born into a fairly well-to-do family. And throughout his life, he was raised in an educated family. He was raised on the stories of soldiers and knights. He was raised on the idea of warrior heroes, marching triumphantly, doing battle against great odds and being victorious through the power of God. And so when he was old enough, of course, he went to war. And while fighting in a particular battle, a cannonball took off the back of his leg, took off the back of his calf muscle. He was unable to move. He was bedridden for a great deal of time. He was in hospital for a very long period of time. And of course, again, being from a well-to-do family, being a soldier, even as briefly as he was a soldier, he was treated in a hospital that was run by sisters of a religious order. And now these sisters, they weren't real pleased with what he kept requesting for his reading material. He wanted more stories of knights. He wanted more stories of war. He wanted more stories of battle. He wanted more stories of heroes. He wanted more stories of warriors. And they would have none of it. But they did want to encourage him to read, and so they continually gave him books about saints. People who had given their lives to Christ. And I suspect very begrudgingly he read those books. And as he read those books, he came across and embraced an understanding that these saints who, many of us would see as boring, they're nothing special, they're nothing great, they're kind of dull, they're holier, and they pray and they meditate and they, have birds land on their hands and on their arms. He came to recognize their true warrior spirit, not just from the perspective that they did battle against evil, but rather they did battle against the problems of the world. They did battle in the way that Jesus called them to do battle. They took care of the sick and the homeless. They took care of the prisoners. They worked to help others heal, to share the gospel. For those who were hungry, they fed them. For those that were thirsty, they gave them something to drink. They had nothing of their own. They sacrificed all they could for their neighbors. And not in that, I'm going to go to war kind of way, but rather in that, I will possess nothing of my own so that others may have more kind of way. And now Ignatius, he was inspired by these folks. He was inspired by these men and women who were found in these books. And when he had healed, he decided that was the path he was going to take. And so he just got out of the hospital and he began doing his thing. And he was brought in front of the Spanish Inquisition 3 times because he was doing his thing in his way. And they forced him to go to school to become a priest. He didn't want to be a priest. He just wanted to serve God as one of the saints. He wanted to serve God as these saints had served God. He wanted to serve God as one of Christ's soldiers. And he didn't think he needed to be a priest for that, and he was right. But finally, after the third time in front of the Spanish Inquisition, as you can imagine, he said, fine, I'll go to school. He went off to Paris, he went to university, he went to the school there, he became a priest. But he didn't want a church, and so he fought taking on a church, he fought taking a parish, and he didn't take a parish to the best of my knowledge. He went and he continued to lead in his ministry, and he had people who followed him. And when the Pope at the time, seeing what he was doing and seeing all the good works he was doing, he said, well, you don't want a church, but you're definitely going to have to create an order, because the work that you're doing we need to maintain somehow. He didn't want to create an order. He was forced to create an order, and so he did. He never felt compelled to start a group. He never felt compelled to start a church or a religious order. But when he finally got summoned to Rome to do the work that the Pope was telling him he had to do, one of the things that he did was he found an old derelict church, something that had worn right out. Nobody was worshiping there anymore. Nobody was fixing it. Nobody was taking care of it. But when he found this building, he didn't start a church where people could come and pray and worship. He started a hospital for the city's prostitutes and for unwed mothers, for orphans. He started a hospital for people that nobody else in the city wanted anything to do with. And it was through that place that he created something where people would go to worship and celebrate and praise in their work, doing God's work with those people who were so incredibly marginalized. It wasn't about evangelism. It was about taking care of their needs. It was about fighting the right fight in the right way. Whatever he had, he gave. Whatever he needed was on his back. He did what he did because it was through Jesus and through the stories of those saints that he recognized that being a true Christian warrior meant far more than taking the life of an enemy. It required much more strength and much more courage than facing an enemy across the field of battle. It required giving up everything for those around you who have nothing. Living this life in such a way that you go without so that others may have. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you, and may you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. I pray that you and I together will walk the journey of a true Christian warrior. That we will understand the true nature of sacrifice. Amen.